You're listening to the We Are Libertarians podcast network. Find all of our shows at wearelibertarians.com.
You know what's smart? Enjoying a fresh gourmet meal at home that you didn't have to cook. Meet Factor, your loophole in the laws of mealtime. Chef-crafted meals delivered with a tap, ready in just 2 minutes. You know what's even smarter? Treating yourself without cheating your goals. Factor is dietitian approved, chef prepared, and you plated. Pretty smart, huh? Refresh your routine and eat smart with Factor. Learn more at factormeals.com.
Good things come in threes, like my 3-row SUV.
Mom, Coach says 3
It gets my 3 kids to 3 sports in 3 different parts of town.
Mom, my new cleats are so
Luckily,
awesome.
I fill up with Synergy Supreme Plus premium gas from Exxon and Mobil stations. It keeps my engine 3 times cleaner for better gas mileage.
Mom, can we get ice cream after practice?
Because as soon as this season's over, the next one begins.
Find a station at Exxon.com. Synergy Supreme Plus gas compared to Synergy regular gas and port fuel injected engines. Benefits based on continuous use and may vary.
You're a podcast listener, and this is a podcast ad. Reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Lips and Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements, or run a reproduced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience with Lips and Ads. Go to lipsandads.com now. That's LIBSYN ads.com. You're a podcast listener, and this is a podcast ad. Reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Lips and Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements, or run a reproduced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience with Lips and Ads. Go to lipsandads.com now. That's LIBSYN ads.com.
What's up, all of our liberty-loving friends? This is another fantastic episode of Good Morning Liberty. My name is Nate Thurston. Co-host Charlie is not here today, but I am sitting down with Chris Spangle of We Are Libertarians and also the Chris Spangle Show, and I don't know, like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 other podcasts. I'm not really sure how many things you do. So
Yeah.
what's up, man? How's it going?
Podcast. I'm actually on BET on a show called Miss Pat Sells It, believe it or not.
Okay.
Yeah, I like to label myself the funniest libertarian podcaster.
Okay.
I've got creds now. So
There you go. The funniest libertarian. I like it. Now we were just mentioning, we talked in 2020. That was the last time you were actually on. We hadn't even seen each other in person at any of these, events or anything. We go to conferences and stuff. And it's been over 4 years now, and about 1,100 episodes or so since you've been on. And I got to tell you, first off, we need to not let it be that long again.
anytime, yeah, I'd love to come on.
So
I promise you this will be one of your least viewed episodes.
I doubt it.
Libertarians and I, since the reason you haven't seen me is I don't go to libertarian stuff anymore, just because I maintain orthodox libertarianism, and that doesn't seem to be all that popular.
We'll talk later about it. We'll talk later about your thoughts on that whole thing for sure. Because of course there's always room for talking about what's going on in the Libertarian Party and the Libertarian movement in general. I think this is going to be one of our most listened to episodes because it's been so long since you've been on, and we're going to talk about stuff that people apparently want to hear about, like what's going on in this freaking election right now. I reached out to you because I sort of felt like we were on the same wavelength with how ridiculous everything is currently. I noticed on Twitter, and I was like, I need to have this guy come on and talk about this because everyone's being crazy right now. And when you see someone who isn't being crazy right now, you kind of want to talk to them to make sure that you're not crazy. And
You might be, but
yeah. Well, not, I guess, about specific things. And this election, oh God, it's been so bad. Of course, it's gotten a lot crazier lately since Kamala came in. Trump, in my opinion, seems to just be completely floundering. One thing we talked about was maybe he doesn't even want to win. That's one of my speculations. So what do you think?
I think that Trump is being Trump, and he is doing the same things that he did in 2020 that lost him that election. It's just that people have forgotten, because Trump has this amazing ability to get people to forget who Donald Trump is and his flaws, and to just grab on to what they like about Trump and forget about all the bad. You know, if you look back at 2020, all Trump had to do in 2020 to win was to talk about his great economy. People gave him a pass on COVID. Okay, yeah, like 200, what was it, 12 million people lost their jobs or something. But people kind of went, well, that's not really his fault. That's the virus. That's COVID. I remember that gas was $2.90. And I remember that this, and he sent us some checks to get us through. And that's all he really had to do. But instead, what he did was talk about, I'm going to use the National Guard on protesters in Minneapolis. I'm going to, I think he lost a lot of people with vaccine talk. I'm not in that camp, but I think if you're in the libertarian world, the right-wing world, like Project, what was it called? Warp Speed. Popular. He never really talked about that, but that was wildly popular with independents and people who wanted to get back to normal. He, you know, when he got COVID, he wasn't honest about it. And then he came back and did the weird thing where he's standing on the veranda, ripping his mask off. And it just got to a point, you know, and then off like Juneteenth, like holding a rally in Tulsa on Juneteenth. He just constantly did these things that a lot of people on the right like, that are trolling. They're transgressive. They really try to violate norms to get laughs. And he is the funniest working comedian today. Like Joe Rogan, not even close to Donald Trump. I mean, and he has this likable quality because of that. And he does seem like an honest person, even though he says one thing and then says the opposite like a minute later. Literally a minute later. If you watch that press conference the other day, he just flip-flops. And you just sort of, that single press conference would be a career ender for any other politician.
Did you hear? Speaking of that press conference, did you hear he had perfect inflation, he had no inflation, he had positive inflation. And that was all within a minute and a half. And also in the same press conference, he said that presidents should have an input on what the interest rate is with the Federal Reserve, and then goes on to talk about inflation. And I don't know what he meant, honestly. I can't tell you what he meant.
He doesn't know what he meant. He hears things, and I do this all the time. Look at my Twitter. Things go in my brain, and then I repeat them like they're fact, but I don't really know the source of them. Yeah, I mean, if you look at Trump, I think we connected because I shared a clip of Ron DeSantis, and he was talking about the fact that Walz gets picked as a governor and then goes out and campaigns on freedom and liberty and the right to do what you want with your body. But meanwhile, the guy has a hotline set up to turn in your neighbors. And DeSantis is basically saying, then why did all these people from Minnesota move here? Right? If you really believed in freedom, then we wouldn't have had negative people in Minnesota and positive people in Florida. And he was so articulate in the way that he presented it that I think what you're seeing with the excitement around Kamala is this like bubble, because Joe Biden, I just watched the Frontline episode about Joe Biden's decision to quit, and you see all this tape of Biden and Trump and how inarticulate and how they've diminished over the last decade. And we've had Trump around for a decade at this point. And he is not the same man as 2016 or 2020. And when you watch the press conference, the rallies, he is so much more shrunken, and he's not campaigning. He's basically taking August off. And, you know, when we get to the election and he loses, you have to remember these things, because people didn't remember in 2020. They just went with the stolen election stuff, and he's setting it up. I think it's unconstitutional that Kamala got, whatever her name is, got picked. You know, it's not unconstitutional. It's closed party business. It's what libertarians have complained about forever, taxpayer funded primaries. You know, so he's not campaigning. When he is campaigning, he's talking about the issues that your friends and independent voters care about, which is her race, her name, and other dumb things that are just completely irrelevant to the average person's life. And sometimes maybe he'll mention that he had a great economy, but that number's upside down. The first poll that says Kamala is trusted with the fixing the economy up by 7 points. So Trump just doesn't seem to have the same vigor. He doesn't seem to have the same ability to stick on message like 2016 when he is picking out things. Like in 2020, he was picking out all these bizarre, weird things to run on, and that's how he lost. So I don't know. It's like neither of these people want to be president, but he just doesn't seem to be the same guy.
What's really gotten to me and frustrated me a lot is this should be a very winnable election for a constitutional conservative to come in and win this election. I really wasn't a fan of Ron DeSantis either. He lost me with a few things. I mean, sure he did some good stuff. He was better on COVID than a bunch of the other governors. I didn't like him going after Disney. That was one of my things, even though I disagree with, whatever. I kind of like the fact that Disney had their own area that they were governing. That looked pretty cool to me. And so I didn't want someone to go after that because they didn't like what their political speech was. Anyhow, but still, like you sharing that clip of DeSantis, like if we just had a normal guy out there or girl out there talking to people about things that they actually cared about and not talking about Brian Kemp, not supporting them, who cares? Who cares about Brian Kemp?
Literally why you lost last time. You lost Georgia because you attacked the popular governor. What are you doing?
And then Republicans lost the Senate because of all the talk that was happening after the election, leading up to the runoff. I think that actually led to Republicans losing that runoff also. And I'm just like, what are you doing, man? And so what's really made me sour on him, even though I've never voted for him before, and we've tried to criticize him anytime that we can, is that I'm very frustrated right now that we're going to end up with a President Kamala Harris and Vice President Tim Walz, and it's not because they're so great. It's because Trump sucks. And I'm not so mad at him. He's almost 80 years old, whatever. He's old. He's not going to change. He is who he is. He's never really hidden who he is. People know what kind of person he is. It's the people that have gone with it this whole time. And it's the cult around him that led to him getting all the primary votes again over some pretty good candidates that I think would have been better for the country than him.
Well, let's play what if, right? Let's say, let's go back in time in the libertarian movement, and Dave Smith doesn't declare that he's running for president, which is why Justin Amash decided not to pursue running for the Libertarian Party nomination. Imagine if Justin Amash was the Libertarian Party nominee. You have a guy who kind of almost closely unites libertarians, right? Which is nearly impossible. Even if Dave Smith was running, he's no fan of mine, but the fact is if Dave Smith were running, you'd have probably more attention being paid to this. But imagine if Justin, and I think that's and he's admitted this, that's a core mistake that the Mises Caucus and Dave Smith made, is announcing too early and fumbling the Libertarian Party race. Because if Justin Amash was out running for president, it'd be like Gary Johnson, where he'd have that level of media attention all of the time, but with a more articulate case for a constitutional conservative government that also appeals to liberals of all kinds, people who want personal freedom and economic freedom. And instead, you're going to get, on the left, your choice is progressive, overarching this form of crony capitalism where regulations are going to come back in the way that Obama constantly put in regulations, hampered the economy, expanded the entitlement state, expanded spending. Or your other choice is a tariff on every good with Donald Trump. I'm not a democracy will end with a Trump presidency, but I do think that the problem with Trump was and is his lack of understanding of norms, his lack of respect for norms, and that drives the breaking of the rule of law, which is essential to libertarianism. You must have the rule of law because you cannot elect someone and have someone with the power that the president has that flip-flops based on their own personal whim. And we can all do these false equivalencies of like, well, Joe Biden and Barack Obama do it. And yeah, they do it, but they still try to do it within the bounds of law. Like, so, I mean, democracy is not going to die if Donald Trump wins. It's pretty hard to kill, but he would be a net negative for liberty in that respect. And, he'd probably be as antagonistic against Iran as Kamala will. because they keep trying to kill him, and they just hacked his campaign.
That's on my list. That's on my list of things to ask you about today. I've got a wild. Okay, so Iran apparently hacked his campaign. I guess that's the case. I know Microsoft said back in June that someone had been hacked, a high-ranking U.S. official, I guess, or campaign official, and now they're coming out saying that Iran hacked his campaign. I'm assuming we're not going to get any of the big releases from that until October. Maybe they'll present some October surprises, just before the election. I have no telling what's in that stuff at all. Of course, it's eerily similar to the whole hack of the DNC emails and getting some of those releases as well. What I'll do, which is what I always do, is at least hope that everyone that was very upset about that hack, affecting that election, that those exact same people are going to be very upset about this hack, affecting this election as well. I'm going to take a guess and presume that that's not going to be the case, because people are generally happy when it's their side that benefits from something. Flip side is the people that are very mad about the Iran thing. I would ask if they were very mad about the DNC hack as well. So I'm just wondering if this is... I've got conspiracy theories on this that have no basis whatsoever, but I love making up crazy stuff. Do you ever make up crazy stuff in your mind to try and go along with what's going on?
No,
online?
I totally think that Joe Biden's advisors... Now, I'm not like Alex Jones level. Like, I'm pretty anti-conspiracy, but Joe Biden's people definitely put him in a debate before the convention to get rid of him. I mean, I'm convinced of it. It's too stupid.
Yeah, that's got to be there. This happened to be the election where they do the earliest debate that they had done, and he goes out there and makes a fool of himself. Hey, I'll go one step further. Did they skip his meds before that debate? Because they've done a pretty good job getting him medicated so he can speak to people. Did they give him a placebo?
I actually felt he was a little more energetic in that than he had been, and I just am mystified by all these people who are like, they hid this from us. They didn't tell the top of the leadership. Like, what are you talking? Just go look at Don Jr.'s Instagram feed.
Yeah. So I've got one that I'm literally making this up right now, and I want people to realize that that's what a lot of conspiracy theories are, is someone just made it up and there's nothing to back them up whatsoever. I'm one that's very open to things being possible, but I will never take actions based on some random theory that someone has, because I've got no factual evidence of them. What if the deep state, those guys and girls, and
they're my friends.
Crazy. Yeah, that's right.
Paid a lot by them, let me tell you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I forgot you're on that side of the Libertarian Party. That's right.
Yeah, I'm a Fed, and I also subscribe to Stratfor, so therefore I'm CIA.
I got you. Okay, so they work up this whole Iran thing as a backup plan just in case Trump happens to win the election. They get this assassination plot, and then they also get this hack. And if Trump wins the election, they've got a backup plan where Trump is going to be hell-bent on seeing Iran as someone that we need to go to war with. Now that's not a completely off the wall
there's
theory,
a lot of
right?
people who think that in my family who think that Trump is a Fed and he's controlled opposition. So anything's I mean, look, war is the health of the state. And Donald Trump is not a small government, limited government, libertarian-leaning guy. Like, Donald Trump really inherently does not have any philosophy undergirding anything he does. It's all about personal grievance. And I think that's a core reason why he's not going to win this election. Like, do people want to go live under personal grievance again for 4 years and see their friends and neighbors transformed to nut? Like, it was really nice the first year or two of Biden where nobody ever thought about Joe Biden. And I think they like that freedom to forget. And Donald Trump is going to surround himself with advisors. He will surround himself with people who want to go to war because they will donate to his campaigns. There's a lot of, it's like Mike Pence, not the only reason, but Mike Pence says, well, I'm not voting for Donald Trump and supporting this election because he represents abandoning our allies on the world stage. Do you think that infrastructure, because this goes back to institutions and democracy, That infrastructure has not gone away if Donald Trump wins. That infrastructure of military contractors supporting Republicans in Washington, D.C. does not disappear because Tucker Carlson has Donald Trump's cell phone number. We cannot be naive about who Donald Trump is. The reason the Iranians want to kill Donald Trump is because he killed Soleimani, their top general, their joint chiefs of staff on the Iranian border. Right. So it was an act of military aggression that is leading to Donald Trump being, targeted. So we have to be really clear that the Republican Party doesn't necessarily. I'm not going to bash them because the single greatest thing that Donald Trump ever did was break the fever of militarism on the right and allow conversation around non-interventionism to spring up in the right without squashing it like the McCain-Bush era did. You don't have to like be driven out of country music like the Dixie Chicks because you aren't supporting you're not a patriot. So, I mean, it's a good thing, but I also think Donald Trump was not the savior of non-interventionism. And I think that if he gets in, he operates off of personal grievance. He's going to start liking and listening to people who have plans for Iran, which we've had since 1998, 99, right? So Paul Wolfowitz is still creeping around somewhere. He might even like Dick Cheney again if it means getting revenge for what they did to his campaign or what they tried to do to him. And again, on that conspiracy thing, like I haven't seen any motivation from this kid. Like he's not right, he's not left. We're not seeing stories of he's just a total schizophrenic like Jared Loughner who tried to kill Gabby Giffords. Did this kid get paid by the Iranians? Like again, totally making that up, totally baseless. But these lone wolves that make no sense, like the Vegas shooter or the Trump assassin, you always have to look, is there foreign interference somewhere in there? And that's why we're not learning, because of national security concerns, we're not learning what the actual motivation was. Because the FBI is not going to hold a press conference and go, Iran put $25,000 in this kid's bank account a year ago. They're not going to do that because it'll just inflame the situation and try to get the public more pissed off.
Are you surprised at how quickly the assassination attempt story disappeared? I mean, I guess the timing of it works out, Kamala stepping in, all that kind of stuff. But the day it happened, we had Spike Cohen on about 5 minutes after we found out it happened. We had no information whatsoever. But we were at Freedom Fest and we had Spike came on, and I told Spike, I was like, hey, Trump just won the election. That's it. He stood up. He said, fight. He's got blood coming down his face, and he survived an assassination attempt. Like, that's it. Just call it done. Of course, at that time, he was running against Joe Biden still, and I think the election was over at that time.
It was, yeah, I agree.
And I think everyone also knew that. That's why they did the extremely democratic swap that they did. And are you surprised that story it's just gone? Like, not really.
And a part of this is Donald Trump's fault. I mean, if you, again, going back to Trump, the missteps that are going to cost him this election, I had the same thought of, this is over. This looks done. Like, even the bad pick of J.D. Vance, like, people kind of forgot it. But if you really think about it, am I going to vote for a person because they got shot or almost shot? I don't think so. I don't know that is going to actually motivate people to vote. As a libertarian, you learn that when I used to run libertarian campaigns, you'd poll at 8 to 10% every year. And everybody would tell your candidate, we're going to win. And you'd be convinced this is the time we're going to beat 1%. Now it got up to 3% as an average there for a while. But the thing is, everybody kind of returns home. So the idea that a lot of people of color are going to start voting for Trump, I think that kind of plays when people are flirting with things in early 24. But then when they actually get into the voting booth, they're like, I really don't like the way that he talks about Kamala Harris. It's funny what people vote for, don't vote for. But that was a great convention. I mean, it was 2008 Obama level convention. I mean, it had me going, man, this guy is going to make a turn. He's pretty reasonable again. Maybe the grown-ups are in charge again. And then he gets up and speaks for like 2 hours about nonsense. You know, you hear, oh, I think he's changed. I think this changed him. He's really relying on Jesus again. You know, he's really, and then what about him has changed? Like, is there anything that has changed? Nothing. And then he picks JD Vance, where he could have picked Burgum, and he could have been like a boring pick, and it could have signaled like maybe Donald Trump is thinking differently about governing. But you can never get fooled by this guy. He is who he is. I'm 40, and I'm probably not changing. It's hard to change, not like when I was 20. Now he's 80. Forget it. Your grandfather is not changing, right? So he is who he is, and there's this excitement around Kamala because people don't know her. They don't know Walz. They kind of don't know JD Vance. They don't really care just because of a couple statements, but they can sort of float on the Democratic side through what people want, right? They don't have to define anything. They can just sort of let the good vibes flow. And look, they're laughing and smiling and they're positive. But Donald Trump doesn't have that ability to really change. And he could have, right? Mm-hmm. He could have like come out and scooped up some independents. Because when you look at the numbers, like in Wisconsin, the Daily just did a podcast. New York Times had embedded people. All Kamala Harris needs in Wisconsin to win that state is 50 people per precinct, right? And they're getting an overwhelming amount of women, even in the rural areas, voting for Kamala because of Donald Trump's approach to women, the way he talks about women. JD Vance's comments weighed in a lot on childless cat ladies. And people who are in the Trump sphere think, well, we're just going to be belligerent, and enough people will see that we're not going away and that we're brave and we're bold and this messaging is solid, and they'll come to their side. And that's just not how voters think. Voters don't think like Twitter.
I think what you just described has been one of the more frustrating things, because I was watching the RNC convention and I was ready for this new Trump to come out and give that speech. And I would say, what do you think? The first 20 minutes, we kind of got that new Trump where he
riveting. Yeah.
Sort of seemed like he was about to cry, said he couldn't talk about it, stuff like that. And I was like, this is the thing, man. If he does this, you know, if he comes out as like an empathetic character and he does this, I mean, that's it. It's over. And then he just didn't. He's talking about Kamala and crazy Nancy and Crooked Joe, and you can't even his Truth Social posts aren't even coherent. I don't even know what the heck he's talking about. And it's so frustrating because we just went through a period where cumulative inflation was 21% officially. We all know different sectors, it's way more than that. Some are less than that. I mean, real wages, according to all those metrics, have actually declined by like 1% during this term, depending on which wage metric you actually use.
Unemployment is up a full point for this time last year. This just got reported before we started recording.
We've got Israel, Gaza, we've got Russia, Ukraine, we've got the potential stuff with Iran getting involved and all that. And all it took was for someone to just talk normal. And instead, what we're doing is we're going to say that the polls are fake, the plane is fake, or the crowd's fake, either one of those two things. The election, if he loses, it's going to be stolen. And all that stuff is getting extremely frustrating to me, because what all those things do is they absolve people from taking responsibility for why they lost and what they could have done different. When you come out and say, oh, I got cheated, that was fake, you know, you're in a game, like, oh, they bought the refs off. Those refs obviously fans that other team, and you never actually consider what you could have done differently. And that's where we are right now with this election, and it's insanely frustrating.
Yeah, the right used to talk a lot about, and this is attractive to me, personal responsibility is essential for being successful. And you are successful if you are excellent. So listen to some Zig Ziglar, get out there and get things done. And the right now talks a lot about what you have personally done to me and how these forces are attacking me and my family, and they're why I'm poor. And I don't think that is an attractive message to people. people want to hear that they can be successful if they do hard things, if they do great things. They love like a Jordan Peterson or a Zig Ziglar because of that message, that inspiring message. And that was a big part of why Trump won in 2016. We're winners. We're going to win. She's a loser. She's a criminal. I'm not. We're going to win. Where's the winning in this campaign? And I think that the Harris campaign has made a smart calculation by coming out and talking about joy and turning that like annoying laughter in the middle of her segments into joy. Right. Mm-hmm. And I don't think a lot of white listeners understand how important the concept of Black joy is in the Black community. And it's going to be very difficult for the Trump campaign to attack joy. Right. Yeah. Not only will it come across as racist to a lot of people of color, but it's also going to be like, why are you attacking joy? That's one of the reasons Donald Trump has always been attractive to me and other people, is because he's kind of, his movement is funny and we don't take this all seriously. And it's, you know, but then somewhere along the last 4 or 5 years, it's become dark and ugly and grievance. And it's not about personal responsibility. It's not about what I could have done better. It's about what they have done to me. And the they is constantly shifting based on one person's bias. And it usually ends up at a pretty racist spot. And I don't want to be racist. I try not to be racist. I try to listen to friends and say, oh, all right, sorry, I didn't realize that was a thing. You know, I'll do better, right? I hate the phrase do better. I have been ashamed to say it. But I still want the message of personal responsibility to be at the core of the libertarian or conservative message, because I think that is incredibly important for building a free society.
What do you what do you think about this Kamala strategy right now? It seems to be a campaign strategy. One, to not take any interviews. I guess we can shift and talk about that a little bit. She's not interviewing. And whatever reason anyone wants to make up about that, I think everyone knows it's because anytime she talks without a teleprompter, she's going to turn some people off. There's a reason that she didn't have very good approval numbers. There's a reason, to go through the talking points, that she did so poorly in the presidential campaign beforehand. She's not doesn't seem like an extremely likable person. And so she's just reading off a teleprompter. And I think a lot of Americans, you said earlier that we would like to just be able to forget that any of this stuff is actually going on. I think that is an outgrowth of that. We just like to hear someone speak from a teleprompter about, say the words that you want to hear and not really have to think about it all that much. They're saying this and so I think that's part of their strategy. And then the craziest thing to me that's actually infuriating is that they're doing this whole mind your own damn business campaign tour. And listen, I don't vote for Republicans either, unless it's, somewhere locally and, it's a nice liberty Republican. But the idea that they're out there doing this mind your own damn business thing is one of the more gaslightiest campaign things I've ever heard in my entire life. What do you think about it?
Yeah, what they're doing is they're trying to reset the view of Democrats from this coastal. I mean, Obama really set the template. Like, if you think about early 2000s Democrats, you'll kind of think about maybe Kucinich, an Ohio Democrat, or Dick Gephardt, an Illinois Democrat, Ed Rangel from Philadelphia. These were like blue collar, hardy guys, right? Here in Indiana, we had a lot of those type of Democrats. We didn't have a lot of Pete Buttigieg's. It's why Mayor Pete didn't do very well here in Indiana, is because he didn't connect. He was like Ivy League guy who just sort of had that Obama view of like, well, you all just need to know what's good for you, right? Which I think is why he was never going to be the pick, is because it's doubling down on that. She is a coastal elite who has never held a private sector job, and yet she still has a $66,000 necklace, and she's going to lecture me on how we need to give to the poor. It's like, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't come across as authentic. And Josh Shapiro, I think, was a lot of that way too. And so Tim Walz comes in, and he's this patriotic guy who was a soldier, and he's a real man. He's a football coach who likes to hunt. And like, all of that is kind of the media and Democrats' perception of what a man is, right? Like, it's so funny to watch these reporters go to these rural towns and like, do you hunt? Like, that's the definition of a man to the media. You've hunted before. And I think that's why the Trump campaign and right are trying to attack that military service record and the fact that he's not a real man because he's, tampon Tim and all these things. They have to sort of undercut his patriotism and they have to undercut his masculinity, because that's right. Like the Jesse Waters, you're not a real man if you vote for a woman, right? You turn into a woman if you vote for a female president. Masculinity is like central to everything MAGA world. Which I think is also a weird thing. But what they're trying to do is, I think you'll see at the convention, a lot of patriotic themes, a lot of themes of freedom, a lot of themes of what a real man is. They're trying to appeal to independence. And the reason it feels weird is that we haven't had that for a very long time because the campaign that she has surrounded herself with understand that what matters are the few swing voters left in counties, in especially suburban districts in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And that is who they are talking to. And those people who live in the suburbs, by and large, I am one of those people who grew up in the suburbs, love America, they are patriotic, but they also don't want bad things to happen to their neighbors, and they see government as something that does good, right? And so that's where the Republicans fall flat, is because they never have. It's really hard as a libertarian or a Republican to come in and say, by doing less, we're going to do good. We are going to help you by not giving you things. That's a very difficult argument that takes a lot of skill. And Trump has come in and he never has made that case well. And he's never, he defaults to giving you more free stuff. I'm not going to touch Social Security. That's the Project 2025 thing is so laughable, because here's a guy who is not going to touch any of the safety net, because that's going to tick off his rural voters, because they take more welfare than any immigrant does. So, I think it's probably a smart campaign strategy, even if to you and I, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz talking about freedom and liberty is just like a laughable thing.
Yeah.
But we follow politics. You do a daily show, right? Like I do a weekly show. We follow this stuff closely. Most people don't have any clue how the president's even elected. They just sort of go, I like that guy. He could be my dad and she could be my mamala.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I wanted to, before we get out of here, can't get out of here without talking about libertarians for a second, if you don't mind. Now, I'll just come right out and say, you and I probably have a lot of these same differences that you've had with other people that are, like on the right-leaning libertarians or whatever. Most of my friends, I have a lot of friends on the Mises Caucus side of the Libertarian Party. I'm not a member of it. I don't know. I guess I'm in the Signal chat. I don't know if that makes me a member. That didn't pay any money or anything. So whatever. A lot of friends on that side, and then I have a lot of other friends. Like Dan Fishman is one of our favorite people to come on. He's one of the great friends that I hang out with at all these conventions and everything. And so we probably disagree because I tend to agree, I guess, a little bit more with people on the right. But also, I hate the idea that we should hate each other and that we shouldn't understand where other people come from. Like, I've got an issue with Chase as the nominee, the same big issue that people mainly go to. But I don't think he's an evil, terrible, monstrous person or anything. I think he's come to a conclusion on something in a different way than I looked at it. And I think he honestly believes it's the most libertarian position. And I disagree with him on that, but I still respect him as a person. I think he's probably a good dude. So how do we fix that? What do you think went wrong here, if something did go wrong? And how are we going to move forward as libertarians with a party if that's even possible?
I don't know that it's possible. I mean, the reality is, like, if you're not with us, you're against us. That's the core mentality that was brought in to the party in 2018 by the BC's caucus. And I was an early proponent of saying this is a bad thing because I had an issue with Michael Heiss early on. And, here I am, like a libertarian podcaster who I didn't know left libertarians. And I took the view that you just took, like, all right, let's hear people out. Maybe other people have different experiences than I do. And by having that attitude, as opposed to, hey, we're all in on this, and we're only going to talk about this, or any kind of criticism of them, it automatically made you a left libertarian. And now that has created like the fakertarians wing, where it goes back at them, and it's like a thing you just have to check out on. I mean, I checked out on it. I'm not. I consider myself a libertarian. I haven't really changed my views on a lot of things. I would not say. I mean, I haven't watched one Chase interview. I don't know anything that's going on, and I would have been a guy who would have been really happy to vote for Chase and support him. It's just that I'm so exhausted by all of it that about 2022, early 22, I was like, I'm sick. Like, I'm physically ill from the stress that being a libertarian podcaster causes me. And to what's the point, right? What's that stress worth? I'm yelling at my wife and kids because I'm mad at some asshat on Twitter. So, I really checked out and kind of just decided, like, I'm going to talk about the stuff that I find interesting instead of trying to save a movement or fix a person or argue with this guy, because arguing with this guy will give me social proof, like on one side or the other. And I think those are just functions of the platforms. And you cannot fix that attitude. You can't fix those things if you are trying to operate on Twitter. Yeah. And I think we've made a huge mistake as a movement by thinking that Twitter is reality, because a real formative experience for me was starting to do the pat down, because that audience is much larger than my audience. I work in the daytime for Bob and Tom, big white rural audience. Obviously, the libertarian audience, you and your listeners will be familiar with. A lot of kind of suburban people. It's kind of liberty thrives in stability, right? So people who kind of have some money or have some stability like libertarianism, because they're not going, I need the school to feed my kids to survive today. And then the pat down audience brought in a lot of progressive women, a lot of Black listeners, and it changed my social media to this like great tableau of these three audiences. And you see the arguments from people, and you sort of build an empathy for people who are different than you. And I think that's a huge reason I didn't go down the populist right-wing libertarian path back in 2020, because I just had a lot of listeners and conversations with people that were different than me. And you sort of go, well, the shitty part is everybody's right. Like the libertarians are right. The right-wing people are right. The liberals are right. Like, it's just, and then, doesn't make you evil. It just makes you different. And you see different paths to a lot of the same goals. Like, libertarians want people to have affordable, good healthcare. So do socialists. They just disagree on the means to get there. And so I think the path to kind of fixing things is exposing yourself to people that you don't agree with and building an in-person relationship with them and trying to expand your local network. A big part of my philosophy now is that politics is inherently violent. It's inherently divisive. We know that piece. So what are you going to do with it? Be angry and violent on Twitter to force other people? Like, it just doesn't work. What matters is not who gets elected president. It's the 100 people that are coming to your funeral. And are you serving those people around you? Are you treating them with respect, love, and dignity? Are you learning about liberty from different paths and perspectives and hearing out friends and family, as opposed to telling them what they need to know? Like, are you listening? And that fundamentally changed me from one of these guys who just, like, my show is immensely worse because I'm not a blowhard. I'm much less secure in a lot of my views because I have a lot of conversations with people that disagree with me. That doesn't make great talk radio when you're saying, Glenn Beck is my hero. I love Glenn Beck. I listen to Glenn Beck a lot, but I'm just like, to be that sure of something so dumb.
Yeah.
I wish I had maintained that to maintain my career. But the fact is, there's a path forward. It's just going to take, I think, a lot of the right-wing libertarians, and I'd say the small amount of left libertarians, just to take a big dose of humility and say, maybe I didn't get it right. And when you talk to regular Mises people, they are great guys. They're generally guys that do go, yeah, I don't like this. Angela messed that up. Michael's wrong here. Dave's wrong here. The leadership doesn't seem to reflect the character of a lot of the individuals that I meet in person. It does reflect a lot of the character of the anonymous Twitter accounts that you talk to. Cat Turd retweeted me the other day and called me an idiot. Right? The replies to Cat Turd were by and large just a bunch of boomers being like, this guy's an idiot, just parroting Cat Turd. It wasn't like mean. But when you get on the wrong side of the Mises Caucus or Dave Smith on Twitter, it is really ugly people. It's really ugly comments. And I think everybody has to think about what audience they're curating and what they find acceptable in their audience, because followers always go further. And I think the left libertarians always go too far in saying, well, Dave Smith is X or Donald Trump is X. That's just, I don't find those things to be persuasive. But the right people who go, the left people are all bad, don't get how ugly some of the comments you get back if you end up on the wrong side of that part of the movement. And so maybe some recognition there of like, all right, maybe we ought to have some internal dialogue. And I do think that has happened. Like, I think the conversation around New Hampshire's Twitter and what's his face, there's been some disavowals that have been positive. Mm-hmm. So just saying, let's just like plant your flag. All right, we're not going past this point with extremism. We're not going past this point on rhetoric. Here are the standards and the principles of good conversation that we think we ought to have. And that goes for all sides. But that's not popular. That's not what's going to be successful. That's not what's going to build your audience, because I actually just sold our Facebook page to Brian Nichols, because in 2020, I realized the only way to get any lift on Facebook was to intentionally inflame my audience, like post a leftist libertarian meme. And then it gets just all this hate. And like, it's just making everybody sick. So I just stopped using it. And I sold it off because it just, I opted out. And the brand is much worse for that, but so what? I'm healthier, the audience is healthier, and I'm not participating in that.
See, that's where I can tell we're a lot alike on that stuff, because I clearly hyperbole wins on social media. That's what you need to post really to get a lot of people riled up. And personally, I just can't do it. Our Twitter has suffered. I do it sometimes and it's fun, and I feel terrible about it afterwards. But
Australian beat dancing, whatever, breakdancing lady deserves a little joking, right? Yeah. It doesn't have to be mean, but
that's fine. I mean, it just, you really got to go very populist. One side is completely correct, the other side is evil. A good example of that is a friend of ours, friend of the show, Josh Eckel, has done a really good job being very saying very specific things about specific groups of the political side. And Josh and I, we've known Josh for a really long time. This is a good example of you should have relationships in person with people, because if I only knew him online, and him and I talked about this last time he was on the show, he was like, yeah, I post the craziest stuff that I can, because that's what it gets. I'm like,
he knows what's going to work.
Like, if I only knew that, then personally I would think he was, like one of my least favorite people in the whole world. But I've interacted with him personally several times, and I know that he's a really nice guy. And him and I know that we disagree on a bunch of this stuff, but we still get along. We still chat and we'll laugh and have a good time in person. But online, according to him, like I'm a racist or something like that. I don't know. And so it's just, it's very important to have these interactions. Like I know a lot of the Mises people, and what I know about them is that they are really good, liberty-loving people who are doing what they think is best to try and grow liberty and have libertarianism as a mainstream ideology in the U.S. And different people might disagree with tactics and stuff like that, but that's what I know about those people that I know. Same thing goes for the whatever you call the other side of the libertarian divide. I don't classical. Is it the CLC?
That I just can't stand.
Yeah,
I'm very politically, and not Mises or non-Mises or whatever, but like because of personal interactions with them, I'm like, this person is just a douchebag.
Yeah,
like, this is. I don't know. It's just. But if you saw their online presence, and of course I'm talking about Spike Cohen, but if you saw their online presence, they'd be, I'm just kidding. I love Spike. He's a tremendous person.
Is there someone who doesn't like Spike? I mean, that is the unification of the Libertarian Party, from what I can tell.
There are people who don't like Spike because of his online presence, because they're ideologically opposed to him. But I think if you've met Spike as a person, I think this is a great lesson to kind of answer your question. Spike has a definite point of view. He brings the heat. He says what he thinks, but he also treats people with respect. And he does that online and in person. And he doesn't like go after, he doesn't make fun of Kamala Harris's name or race or laugh, or maybe a little bit of that, but like the wholesome Sabbath meme is popular. He goes after policy, and you can do these things and be effective in the way that Spike is effective. Spike was visiting Indiana. I couldn't come to his event, so I didn't see him. Spike found out I was at a park in Greenwood, and on the way to the airport stopped for 20 minutes just to say hi and talk and catch up.
Yeah.
He didn't have to do that. He could have said, well, I probably would not have done that because I'm not as good of a guy as Spike. But he invests time in relationships, and that makes people go, well, I don't agree with the way he said that or why he said that or that point, but I like Spike. He's a good dude. He's making an effort in these ways. And it's just, I think, the template for kind of how we get back to kind of mutual respect. There's been a lot of hurt feelings. There's been a lot of, it's just there's an era of forgiveness that I don't know that we have the humility to undergo. But, as a Christian, you just sort of look at it and go, all right, I have to just, like, for me, it was just, I need to just stop talking about it. Like, I'm answering your question honestly right now, but like, I don't talk about the Mises Caucus online as much anymore. I did kind of at the convention go, haha, I was right, but that was just me being petty. But the thing is, like, you just at a certain point have to let it go. Like, Hudak, all these folks, Tom Woods, everybody, let's just have a hug. It's never going to happen. It's just, but Eagle, I don't know Eagle personally, but yeah, I've heard that, like, in person, he's a nice guy, but you read his Twitter and you're like, oof.
Yeah.
You're voting for Kamala? What?
Yeah, can I just point out, I'll say this again, just because you hate Trump, it does not mean you have to go vote for Kamala. Those are very different things. I'm not going to vote for Trump or Kamala. I might not vote for anyone. And that will be my vote. Not voting will be my vote potentially this year, And there's something different about deciding that you're going to go punch it for Kamala instead. I don't know exactly how that works, exactly what happened there, because I know what Josh's philosophical beliefs are on a lot of things, and I don't get it. I guess I just don't hate Trump that much, and that's where I differ with a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean the argument that, and he's coming at it from a liberal point of view, like, we've got to protect liberal democratic capitalism, and I don't know how you get to Kamala represents protecting liberal democratic capitalism. But I do see how you could see Trump as an existential threat on that. But I'd also say, and this is not an argument for Trump, this is just an argument for voting for a third party or an independent. Vladimir Putin, the USSR collapsed. And then over 8 years under Yeltsin, they built democratic reforms. The government of America, the European Union countries, invested a ton in building democratic functions and institutions in Russia. It took Vladimir Putin 20 years to tear those down. Now, we are a country of 250 years or more of democratic institutions. One guy's not going to tear all that down. And you really have to think about, am I emboldening somebody who is just as destructive to the American project as Donald Trump? So that's where I just look at it, and I don't agree with that as a path for protecting liberty.
Yeah, totally agree with you on that. All right, let's wrap this up. This has been a really good conversation. Our listeners are going to love it. You said this would be one of the least listened to. I think this one's going to kill it this week, man. It's going to be good. Tell everyone where they can go to listen to all of. You got a lot of stuff. So where can they go listen to that?
Just look up Chris. You can go to chris-spangle.com, find all of my different projects. ChrisSpangle.com is the podcast for the Chris Spangle Show. Check it out there. And the We Are Libertarians Podcast Network. I think we only have like 2 shows left, but I just sort of said, I'm not giving up on the network. I'm just not just gonna let this fever pass.
Okay.
More new
Okay.
listeners, but yeah, wearelibertarians.com. You can check out all our different shows.
All right, Chris. So thank you so much. And like I said, it doesn't need to be 4 years before you're on again. So we can talk again anytime, man.
All right, yeah. Let's not talk during the next Olympics.
Okay. All right, dude. Have a good day. Thank you for coming on.
All right, take care.